Yo, what's up, YouTube? If you're a white collar worker, you need to pay attention because a recent article just came out that says that your job might be at risk. Let's jump right in. So the title of this article says white collar workers face a new threat. It says those working from home may be concerned about pressure to return to the office, but there is another threat lurking on the horizon. If high paying white collar jobs can be done remotely, outsourcing them to cheaper areas could save organizations money, Fortune writes. Experts have predicted a post-COVID surge in so-called telemigration, but recent data also shows the highest paying jobs are often the ones most easily done remotely. With the biggest gains in work from home going to knowledge workers during the pandemic, the threat may loom largest for them now. All right, so basically this article is talking about white collar workers and the fact that, if you have a job where you can work from home anytime, anywhere, regardless of where the company is located, that job is at risk of being outsourced to someone else in another part of the world who can do that job for maybe half the cost or 1/3 or 1/4 the cost. And if you think about it, it makes sense, right? Just think about it. Let's say you had your own company and you were looking for workers to, let's say, build a widget on your website or build a new product or whatnot, or you needed someone to help sort of maintain your e-commerce website. Are you going to hire someone who lives in a high cost of living and pay them 4x, 5x more? Or are you going to want to find someone who can do the same quality job at a much lower cost, right? That's just simple economics 101, especially if you want your business to thrive and be successful. And I think this is a real threat, to be honest with you, especially, as someone who works in tech, as someone who works in the product management space, I do think to a certain extent that our jobs are a little bit more safer because the PM role is more than just churning out Jira tickets or writing requirements. There's a lot involved where you have to make human judgment calls. There's a lot of influence that needs to be done. And, if you have, let's say, difficulties with the English language and you want to, let's say, work for a US company and work with other English speakers, then I think there's also certain competitive advantages you can have when you have that sort of skill set. But there are also other roles out there in the tech space, whether it's in engineering or in design, marketing, business, whatever, even in PM, where I do feel like as technology advances, as automation becomes much more robust, that a lot of these jobs are going to be at risk. And I think this is a threat that a lot of us who work in white collar jobs, whether it's in tech or financial services, or let's say you're a lawyer, technology and disruption and innovation is impacting all industries across all types of different job functions. And so to think that your job is going to be safe for the next 10, 20, 30 years, I think is a foolish thing to think. And we need to pay attention. Anyways, let's continue going off into the article. It says that the fact that many jobs can be done from home can also be done anywhere around the globe is often missing in the remote work discussion, says Anna Stansbury, an assistant professor at MIT Sloan in Business. Companies haven't yet internationally, actually, let me blow this up a little bit. Companies haven't internationally outsourced many jobs that require higher education, adding that many call center type jobs or remote first jobs like software design or back-end engineering have already been offshored. But if high paying white collar jobs can be done remotely, outsourcing them to cheaper areas could pretty much offer huge savings. The potential for change would be seismic if all of these well-paid white-collar jobs were suddenly outsourced to less rich countries, she adds. If people that code for Google and Facebook were able to live wherever in the US they wanted and work for a year and a half without ever going into the office, it seems very, very likely that a lot of companies will be rethinking this longer term and outsourcing those kinds of jobs that didn't used to be outsourced. Yeah, without even having access to those leadership conversations, it's pretty obvious that companies, especially now, are more than ever are looking to cut costs. I think it's pretty safe to say that we're in a bear market and we're going to most likely be in a recession if we're not in it already. And so companies like Google, Facebook to start with, but other companies across the board are going to look to cut costs. And I would be lying to you guys if I told you that I wasn't also concerned or worried about my job, because, who's to say that there isn't another Paul who could speak English and also has the experience, halfway around the world who can do the same thing that I do at 1/4 the cost. So, this is something that, I'm personally thinking about. And that's one of the reasons why this channel exists. It's also one of the reasons why, I'm not leaning 100% on my 9-to-5 job to also make an income, because, if I lose tomorrow, or if, the global tech market suddenly crashes and companies just start to lay off people left and right, how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to pay my mortgage and put food on the table? So I think it's important that, regardless of what kind of job you're in, that you're always thinking about how to not rely on a single source of income and also create other ways that you can support yourself and your families. Going on to the article, it says that Stansbury is not the only person ringing alarm bells on remote work. It says that experts have said outsourcing remote jobs is a real possibility, one that could fill in the gap of a tight labor market, but one that also could not bode well for workers during a recession. Yeah, we just talked about it. If you can do your job from home, be scared. be very scared because somebody in India or wherever is willing to do it for much less. Just think about it, guys. If you think about websites like Fiverr or Upwork, you can just type in, hey, UX design or video editing, and you can find people who are willing to edit videos for like $5 a video, or maybe even less than that. And so there's a huge amount of talent, and the internet has really leveled the playing field for someone, halfway around the world to do the same type of job that you're looking for a fraction of the price. And what this article is trying to say is that white collar jobs aren't exempt from that. And I think companies are starting to ask the question, how can we still maintain our quality of productivity and innovation while also saving money? And a lot of these job functions are going to all be looked at. I don't think there's a single role that is exempt from this. And those of us who are in white collar roles need to be paying attention. It also goes into saying they've categorized jobs into one of 4 groups: highly offshoreable, hard to offshore, and non-offshore. Landing in the highly offshoreable job category requires no answers to just 2 questions. Does a person in this occupation need to be physically close to a specific US work location? And if not, must they physically be close to a work unit? In the post-COVID workplace, tasks that can be done remotely will inevitably be done by telemigrants rather than domestic workers, they predicted. It also says, according to the Washington Post's analysis of the Labor Department data on remote work during the pandemic, the more a job pays, the easier it is to do a job remotely. And the highest paying industries like software, internet publishing have the most remote workers. The lowest paying jobs in sectors like retail and food service are also the least likely to go remote. Although I would argue that Amazon Go are kind of changing the paradigm where they're even removing, grocery workers and cashiers in favor of self-checkout lines where customers can go in, pick up what they want on the shelves, and then just walk out. And I think that's honestly the future for a lot of these retail workers. Knowledge workers who have greatly enjoyed the chance to work from anywhere may need to prepare for the possibility that their good luck could dry up. And I think that wraps up the article. Yeah, guys, this is definitely a threat. I think this is something we all need to pay attention to. And, my advice and I guess my thoughts on this is that, there's no job that's really truly safe. And there's another component to think about this where, I've heard this phrase before, and it says that people get hired for experience, but they get fired for fit. And if you're someone who gets along with your team, if you're someone that people genuinely like to work with, that's a premium. That's an attribute of a worker that goes a long way. And just because someone can do a job remotely at a fraction of the cost doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be able to get along with their coworkers, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to communicate verbally through emails, through Slack messages, and actually get things done productively, because most work these days are done through teams. There are certain jobs and certain functions where you can work in a silo and get things done just by yourself. But for a lot of these more complicated, product development, research and development, engineering, you have to work on a team. And that's why I think a lot of the soft skills like communication, influence, problem solving, a lot of this is supremely important. And if you can develop those skills to a point where companies can't just let you go, and you've mastered them to a point where you're a huge benefit and an asset to a company, they're going to think twice about letting you go just to save a few bucks or even a lot of bucks. The other thing I'm going to add here is the fact that, the article talked about remote workers and people who are adamant about being able to work remotely, and that those jobs are the ones that are most at risk. I think there's also something to be said there, where if you're more flexible and if you're coming into the office on a regular basis, getting that face time with your team and having that connection with your coworkers and your partners, I think that's also going to work in your favor and not necessarily protect you from a potential layoff or whatnot, but I think it definitely helps. Building that rapport and having a relationship with your team, I think goes a long way, and managers are less likely going to want to cut people that they genuinely enjoy working with or having work for them. So those are my personal thoughts. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you agree with this article? Do you think that white collar jobs are at threat, or do you think this is just a bunch of baloney? Like this video, share it if you haven't, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.